Hello, welcome to Forest Focus. As Nottingham Forest fans wait patiently or not for the club to make signings with the Premier League season less than a month away. Fans seem divided and podcast panelists are too. So we'll discuss how bad it is or isn't and look at the latest transfer talk in the company of, first of all, Greg Mitchell. Afternoon, how are you?
Very well indeed. Great to be on with such great guests.
Sounds like you're throwing shade straight away there. We haven't even started yet. Pete Blackburn, how are you?
All right, yeah. I was slightly distracted because I see Rishad Pants just walked out to bat in the cricket with a broken foot that was ruling him out for 6 weeks apparently, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, I'm good. Also delighted to be on with such great guests, but without any sort of snideness from me. But disappointed to see that Greg's not wearing any of his influencer clothes today, which is a shame.
Save that for tomorrow in the live show. Which you've just got a ball on his toes, haven't you? Pin him. That's mad. For people who are listening or watching, is that what, a 1995 England one-day shirt, Pete? What era is that?
No, I think it's later than that. It's circa 2003-4, I think.
It's definitely Freddie Flintoff, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it might have been the sort of end of the Hussein one-day cricket sort of style before things changed a bit. But yeah, retro.
Talking retro, Mikey's wearing 1992 England third kit or England away kit. Mikey, Clarke, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to be back on Daytime show. I think it's either early 90s or very late 80s, but it's quite an old one when they were, very stylish and straight to the point.
Well, it is wondrous anyway. It is wondrous. Right. Greg pointed out before we started, we're on his lunch hour, so we can't have such inane waffle. We should get into some important discussions. So I shall tee up this whole discussion about where Forest are in the transfer window with a few stats and a little bit of context, and then we'll get into it. Now, like an absolute loser, I went through every Premier League club and counted up how many signings they've made, how many sales they've made. I didn't include the promoted clubs because they tend to do a lot of business. The average number of signings per club so far is 3.2, and ours is 2. And the average number of sales is 3.5, but that doesn't take into account the value of the players, the team. Like Brentford haven't actually sold that many players, but they've sold their best one and probably their second best one to go as well. And I've also got a couple of quick charts on spending to show the power of the big clubs and also, interestingly, where we sit on the totem pole. High spending clubs in Europe so far in the transfer window. Loads of English clubs. Liverpool top, Chelsea second, United third, City fourth, Arsenal fifth, Tottenham sixth. Sunderland are on there as well because they're having a go. But that just shows how much big spending Premier League clubs are flexing their financial muscles this summer. And top sales so far in Europe. Leverkusen are top. These figures are all in euros. Then Bournemouth, then Chelsea, then Wolves, then us. These figures are all from Transfermarkt. We've sold 107 million euros worth of players. Brighton are on there as well, and Brentford. So you can see Premier League clubs who've done quite well are being targeted as well. But obviously we've sold a few out of choice. Right. Greg is Mr. Optimistic generally, so we'll let Greg kick off. How are you feeling about where we're at, taking all that into account? And one more thing I'll say, Greg, sorry before I start. Just before we start recording, Alexander Isak reportedly says he wants to leave Newcastle. So that's another club where their fans are kicking off with frustration, which is quite funny after signing a
That's really sad, isn't it? I really feel for them.
Brentford and Newcastle selling the best players. That's beautiful for my ears.
Kick us off, Greg. How are you feeling?
All right, I just want to start by saying you're not a loser without sounding like Roy Keane. That is your job. So yeah, I enjoyed reading that, and I didn't realise we'd sold that amount in monetary terms. And like, kudos to us for really. I mean, we've lost Elanga, haven't we, out of the main starting bunch? So to get 100 and odd million in the pocket so far is pretty good. I'm still feeling okay. I'm not panicking. I'm not being a bit of a doom merchant or wondering like where the next signing's going to come from. I've still got confidence in them. We've got a great team behind it all, and I think we'll be absolutely fine. There'll still be those stellar signings. We'll dominate the yellow bar on the sports news channels, and yeah, all good. We're going to change formation, change the way we play. It'll be fine.
I'll get into, we'll discuss some names. There are names coming up I think there was a comment on yesterday's podcast saying that people are getting bored of discussing the same players and the same questions, and I can sort of foresee where they're coming from, because it does feel like that saying we're treading water a bit. But I think there's got to be breakthrough soon. I guess, Mikey, you're going to say there's got to be breakthrough soon because you're worried where we are already, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit. I'll just caveat it though slightly. So I think, 4 years ago we were bottom of the Championship and we're having very different discussions. So the exponential rise of this football club has been unique. It's been stellar, and now 4 years later we're talking about, a team that missed out on the Champions League within the last 90 minutes, probably going to play in the Europa League, finished 7th last season, got some amazing players, and yet I'm still nervous. Isn't that strange? So I think what happens is at the end of every season, your expectations probably reset, and you refocus and you say, right, we've ticked that box of growth. We've got out the Championship. We've managed to stay up. We've pushed on even further. We've got internationals playing for us now from all over the world. We flirted with the Champions League, but we managed to get into Europe. What's next? And that'll be the conversation that's happening behind the scenes. Make no bones about that. So I just wanted to caveat by saying we're in a phenomenal position, and Greg's right, we are, and it is going to be exciting, and there will be players through the door, and I absolutely get that. And my confidence level in the recruitment team and everybody behind the scenes is probably the highest it's been probably since I remember. That's not the issue for me. I think the issue now is we've reset. People are looking at what we can do now. We are probably going to lose two of, if not our two best, most impactful attacking players. And at this point in time, and granted there's 3 weeks left to start the season, we are looking significantly weaker than we were at the back end of last season, where we took 8 points from 8 games or whatever it was and slipped down the table. So I'm looking right now, I can see the bigger picture and I know we'll fix it. And your point around some of the teams being picked and Newcastle fans' frustration and Brentford losing their manager and half the team, Bournemouth losing 3 of the back 4. I get it. Everybody's finding it difficult, but I don't give a crap about other teams. I just look at where we are right now. And I think if you're honest, and I think if you ask the people behind the scenes, I think we expect to be further on than what we are right now. That's not to say we're not going to fix it. It's just there's a lot of talk in the media about going for these players, and we seem to keep getting pipped to them. Now, I'm sure they've got an A list, a B list, a C list. And what they're probably doing now is trying to shop at as much as they can in that A list before they drop down. And I get that. But the season's 3 weeks away. And, I looked at the team that's flown, the squad that's flown to Portugal for the training camp. I'm not sure you can put 2 11s together. I don't think you can. You're playing players that position. So we're looking thin. We're looking weak. Our first team and our depth has been impacted. And they need to get a wriggle on. And I think they know that. So I'm not doom sponge, as Greg calls me. I'm not. It's just...
He called me doom sponge.
Yeah, I just think...
4 of you. Not you.
Yeah, there is. I just think we just need to be a little bit more proactive. And, Temp said something last week, which I fundamentally disagreed with. I love the guy, but I think he was wrong. When he said, you've got to wait till the end of the transfer window to let the dominoes fall, and some of these players are going to be available. That, to me, is not a tactic. That, to me, is not a strategy. That's just to see where we are and then chuck a load of stuff at it and see what sticks, because everybody's going to be doing that, and that is so risky.
But that's how it works. You can't sign players if clubs aren't willing to let them go for that price.
True, but you know what I said about the A-list, B-list, C-list? I think we've got to be realistic and say, if we're competing against Champions League teams, we're probably not going to get some of these players. So let's get him first on the B list, whatever that is. And let's make sure that we're not scratching around, panicking, chucking way over the odds at players over those last couple of days, because that's where I get nervous. And that's where I think we don't want to fall back into old times. So I think where I'm at is I trust them. I'm just itchy. I'm twitchy. I'm whatever you call it. I just want to see a bit of proactive movement. And if that does mean dropping down to list B, then so be it.
Can I just say as well, we keep talking about being significantly weaker. You look at our attacking options now, and you've got Taiwo, and you've got, how are we saying Jesus?
I say Igor Jesus.
Jesus. we've still got the strongest potentially back four on paper if you're looking at stats and stuff. Like, we've managed to keep that, and the goalkeeper who's got the golden glove. It's not massive additions we need. I think we've had that many years of signing and getting them all. We are willing to just wait and make sure we get the player rather than a player.
Yep, and I don't disagree with that. Sorry, Peter. I don't disagree with that at all. But I think you made a point earlier on, Greg, about we might be playing a different formation. I think that might be forced because we don't really have any wingers. So is that the plan? I mean, is it? I mean, I don't know. We're just going to have to see how things pan out over the next couple of weeks. But I think I echo a lot of people that I've spoke to. I think there is a bit of nervousness around, and I just want us to be a little bit more proactive and give this manager what he deserves, because he's done a remarkable job.
I think you can make viable arguments for both. Both of you are making viable arguments, because Greg's right. We're only missing one player from our first 11, but Mikey's right. We've got European football as well, so you need to. You've got work to do on both sides. Pete, you can sort of be the deciding vote here in a sense. Or you've listened to both lads. Where are you at?
Oh, that feels very powerful. I like that deciding vote idea. Well, look, I think it's probably not unfair to say I'm somewhere in the middle, but I firstly, I agree with what Mikey says about strategy. I don't think it's true that you just have to wait until the end of the window now, because that's how it all plays out. I think good clubs do as much preparation and work as they can as early as possible, and you just have to pay the right fees to the right clubs who need it at the right time for the players that want to go. That's how it works in recruitment. So I still think that is how we should be going, and we shouldn't just be waiting for the end. And I don't think that is how it works. Ultimately there will be some of that sort of business at the end, but I think that's probably the only thing of Mikey's sort of general perspective on it I do really agree with, to be honest. Like, I think the facts of this, as far as I see them, we're probably quite a long way off where we want to be. I think that applies to both the fans and to what they want in the football club. I think there's a pretty shared understanding of what is needed at the football club in terms of the squad. We all could analyse that at the end of the season, and we clearly haven't done an awful lot of work to get to that point yet. However, it's early days. I think that there's been a number of distortions of how we feel about it, with the window opening earlier, which made things sort of seem a lot more frantic and feel like a lot more has happened than it has at this point. The players have only literally just gone to Portugal, so there is time still to get players in and for them to have a decent period of time in the squad. It is absolutely bang on that it's not ideal right now, but the scenario is never going to be ideal for a football club like ours, because we are going to have to do lots of work to keep afloat. We're going to have to sell big players that we don't want to, and it's going to mean having to do a lot of recruitment to replace them. It's not an easy situation to be in, and it's never going to play out in the perfect way that you'd like it to. I think it's worth saying there's a lot of context here. I think the Gibbs-White situation is a big one, and that's a looming factor that changes things very significantly as to whether he ends up staying at the football club or going. That is a very big difference, and a lot of work that has to be done if he does go. So clearly that's a situation that we're not entirely sure how it's going to play out at this point. Those outgoings, the two of them, if they do both go, if Gibbs-White goes as well as Elanga, not what I wanted, but I'm understanding of the situation because of PSR, and I think it's probably more ideal to do it at this point than it would be later on in the cycle, where perhaps we get even less money and we'd be more up against it and more desperate and all that sort of stuff. That's all context. The other context Greg touched on is we've done an awful, and in your charts, we've done an awful lot of good work in terms of moving players out of the football club for good fees as well. Now, I don't think you can just take that stuff for granted at a football club where that has been an absolute mess for a decade or two. Prior to recruitment improving at the football club, we had a consistent nightmare of having, a full team of footballers at the football club who had nothing to do with the first team and who cost us an awful lot of money. And that's because recruitment in the past has been erratic, it's been scattergun. I've been hugely critical of it for a number of years until things have changed recently. And that's all part of the situation we're in now. I think the only reasonable thing to do is to understand that recruitment, to do it well, is hard, and they've given us evidence that they can do it. So I don't see any reason to need to be impatient about that. The other context around it is new contracts. Greg touched on it as well. I mean, that's really important stuff. We've kept a back five that is as solid as we've ever had at the football club for, well, not ever, but certainly for a very, very many years. And they're all staying here. What a platform that is to build on. We're also not starting from afresh as we were last season. You know, it's important to have players in for pre-season, but it's not as important as it was last year when it was Nuno's first pre-season and we didn't have any of those sort of bonds that pre-season brings. Now we have got all of those things already in place, and it's a case of adding to it. Clearly, the earlier the better with footballers, but getting it wrong is not an option at this point. That's how I see it. So there will, you know, obviously Nuno's going to want those players in as soon as possible, and as do I. But I don't think it's a case of having to build the dynamics of a football team from nowhere. We're starting from a much higher base than we were this time last season, and you can add in the talent rather than having to bring it all together at the start. So, look, where I am is not concerned at all, to be honest. Ideally, I'd like us to be further along than where we are. I think that we're putting an awful lot of faith in an awful lot of people talking an awful lot of nonsense on Twitter and in tabloids and such like, if we're judging the state of our recruitment by whichever I was trying to use words that aren't offensive, but whichever person in the sort of transfer tittle tattle bubble is saying that Forest have been, you know, trying for this player and that player, and they've been turned back by this player and that club and whatever. You know, most of that stuff's not true. That's the reality of it. Most of it is us being used as a football club that do a lot of business and need to do a lot of business by agents and by clubs and by players to drum up more interest and to be useful for them. So look, I think we need to peel away all of that noise and accept that. You know, you watch that Nico Williams video that he's just done, look around the players on that plane. I think there's an awful lot to be excited about in the squad. There is an awful lot of work to do. I don't think we need to panic about the fact that we haven't got that far down that list of work yet. And actually, personally, I'm going to make the decision to be reassured by the fact that it's taking a long time, because the evidence of recent years is the football club have turned a massive U-turn on recruitment and are now doing it strategically and properly and carefully, and they're bringing in football players who only improve the football club. And that's where we have to be. You cannot afford to make mistakes if you're Nottingham Forest under PSR. It's not like the old days where a rich owner can just write off the loss of a player. Now that really hurts us, and it means we can't do something else along the line in terms of bringing footballers in. So I think the evidence is there that we can trust what they're doing, and I think I would much rather see us be strategic than be desperate and panicky. We can't go down that route again.
Drunk my whole cup of tea through that. That was lovely, Pete. Thank you. I almost put the clock on you there.
Mikey and Greg kept me out of the chat for so long that I got really ready to contribute. Sorry.
Pete talks positive and talking lots of sense. I talk positive and I'm away with the fairies. I love the internet.
I know.
I thought that's excellent.
Oh yeah, it was good. It was interesting. Thanks to Paul Morley for the most Paul Morley-esque analogy in the chat as well. I don't even know where to put it on the screen about being on the pull in a nightclub, basically. But Paul's on tomorrow. Yeah, classic Morley. Paul's on not tomorrow, Saturday on the post-match show. After he kindly informed me the game kicks off at 8 o'clock, not 3 o'clock. Which shows how well prepared I am, certainly. Right, we shall talk a few specific names in a moment. Just for that, a word for the Trent Navigation. You can watch the Euros final, England versus Spain, Sunday, 5 o'clock kickoff. Inside and outside, and the food kitchens are open as well, so that should be good. Last push as well. For our live show, all three lads here are on the panel tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Search gigantic.com with Nigel Jempson. Will be a good night, I'm sure. Pete has been diligently preparing quiz questions for giveaways as well, so do come along.
Not yet. I've talked about doing it, but it hasn't actually happened yet. But it will happen, and it will be good.
Pete has diligently given the veneer that he's preparing quiz questions.
He's taught the talk.
He's taught the talk.
I didn't let you down before. You'll be all right.
Exactly. I'm sure we will. Let's talk Dan Ndoye quickly then for the latest on him. Reports in Italy saying that Napoli have bid, Forest have bid. This is from Corriere de Bologna today. There's loads of conflicting reports around this, but this seems to be sort of a generic where the position is. They say Forest are readying a new bid for the Swiss star and are looking to offer 37 million euros plus 5 million in bonuses. Bologna's asking price has come down to 45 million euros, which is a lot, which we'll discuss. Napoli want to sign him on loan, but Bologna aren't keen on that. And that's why, according to this report, Nuno Espirito Santo's side have an advantage. Bologna are trying to create an auction, and this talk of Man United being dropped in, sort of as Pete was saying, is a bit of a smokescreen by the sound of it. So I suppose, Greg, the question is, and it goes back to what we were discussing about the fee and things like that. Do you want us to bite the bullet and pay what is a high fee, but he's a very good player, and it might be what the going rate? So do you have any thoughts on this kind of pursuit for Ndoye, or just in general to replace Elanga?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have a structured approach, won't we? When we go in with the bid, it won't just be 40 million on the table and there you go. So we've done it before. We've paid what seemed to be over the odds for players in like Gibbs-White, where other clubs said that's way too much. And look at him now, and we seem to know when we can get a player and make them even stronger. And he's in mid-20s or something, so he's got a lot of potential in 2-3 years when you seem to get these players to their best after being here for a season or two. So I probably would spend. I don't think we'll need to go to 45, but I think if we get it right, we can get him, and it'd be a good signing.
Yeah, he's 25 in October, I think, or he's 26 in October. One or the other. I did check. What do you think, Mikey, in terms of the going rate? People are reluctant to spend all the Elanga money on one player, but a proven Serie A player, a Swiss international, you're probably going to have to do that because, we're trying to get signings, and now you can't have. I feel like you can't really have it both ways and get all the players you want on the cheap and get them in quickly, can you?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Sometimes you've got to pay to get him in. I think what's funny is wherever he ends up, he'll say he always wanted to go there and nowhere else, because that's what players do. But I think with him in particular, I've seen him a couple of times, and he's been the best player on the pitch every time I've watched that. I saw him against England as well. He was great. And I think, we always pride ourselves on having a really strong first 11. We always debate around the options, and Pete's just talked about we're moving some of those players on, hopefully to get a few better backups coming in. But I think our first 11 is absolutely key. And he's one that could slot absolutely straight in from what I've seen. It would give us options. I think he can play pretty much anywhere. Obviously, he's got his preference, but I think you just got to pay over the top. And I'd rather if he's in the A-list, like I was talking about, and he's absolutely one they've targeted, then they might have to pay over the odds to get him in. And that's kind of where I'm at on it. So I think if he rocks up at the City Ground, I'd be absolutely delighted. My nervousness would shrink a little bit. I'd be less panicky. And I'd go back to my default setting of, do you know what? These guys have done fantastic in the last few years. So trust them. I'm just a bit twitchy. But he's absolutely one that will improve the first team. Is it a good age? We can have that one big move in a few years' time if that's what he wants. So it's an easy sell. We're going to have Europa League football. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Napoli bid doesn't land as well as what ours does, and we can get him over the line. And I think that will be a great statement of intent from us, and give us that option to not have to go to a back five because we've got another genuine winger in.
Jason asks, is Ndoye better than Elanga? I suppose, Pete, we don't know. You might have a take on it because you might have seen a bit more of him, but the recruitment team will have that view, won't they? And that will inform how much they go to accordingly, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that I like Ndoye, and both Dan Cook and I chose him for a podcast we did previously, scouting potential replacements for Elanga. I think to answer Jason's question just with my opinion rather than any facts, I wouldn't put the sort of expectation on him that he'll come in and be immediately better than Elanga was in the sort of second half of last season. I think that would be asking a lot. But I do think he's someone who can slot into that role in a slightly different way. Certainly a much less explosive player than Elanga, because almost everyone is, but still quick. I think he's probably a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit more direct in the sense that he's probably more of a central goal threat than Elanga often was. Not direct in terms of just running at his man, but in terms of being perhaps someone who will come in off the line and try and contribute in that way. So I'm not sure he's a better player than Elanga is right now, but I think he's someone who is very good and can come here and hopefully thrive in the environment that we've got, and hopefully add more to his game in the Premier League. So that would be my take on that question. I mean, in terms of the money, I think it's interesting because people will probably be familiar with me being very sort of tight on the purse strings and moaning about spending lots of money on players and wages and that sort of stuff. I mean, when we talked about him in the scouting episode, I sort of had in my head that you're looking at probably a £30 million player that you get for 30, 35, that sort of fee. So the numbers that we're talking about aren't miles away. And to be honest, I think that Forest are in a position now where they've done enough business on outgoings that they can afford to probably pay a little bit more on a player like Ndoye, on the basis that you're signing him from a league where wages are much lower. I think Forest would double Ndoye's wages and it'd still be miles off our top earners. And therefore, it's not a terribly expensive deal. It's not the same scenario as signing a sort of Jacob Ramsey and having to pay him enormous money, and then you really want to be careful about the fee and all that sort of stuff. It's a massive package. I think signing from Serie A, Ndoye's probably on 25, 30 grand a week as things stand, possibly even less. I think it's the sort of deal where you can afford to say, we'll stick another 5 million down to get this done right now because it means that to us, and that's what valuations are ultimately, isn't it? You know, there is no sort of actual figure of what a player is worth. He's worth what he is to you and to the club and all that sort of stuff. And at this point, I think a sort of relatively plug-in-and-play replacement for Elanga would be really valuable for Forest. So, you know, I'd be willing to pop a bit more down to try and get it done.
Let's talk about the latest big rumour. Big name rumour, not big rumour, but sort of fits into what Pete was saying about money and everything. The Daily Telegraph saying that Forest are interested in, and I don't know how much more than that, in Christopher Nkunku, Newcastle as well, clubs in Germany, I think, as well, where he's played. I mean, Greg, I'll go to you first. He's a top player. And to me, if Gibbs-White goes and you play him as a second striker behind Wood or Jesus, that's very exciting. I guess it all comes down to money and whether you can get him, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was just having a quick look. How much are they saying, or are they not?
They haven't said. I mean, no, well, I don't know. If it's maybe it's a loan.
Surely with Chelsea, you're looking at a loan. But that's the thing: 27-year-old and being able to loan a player out is crazy. So maybe it is going to be a bid, but. Yeah, it's one of Chelsea's millions of players. Then is it?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, he's probably on about 200 grand a week, 180 grand a week. I think I saw. I don't know. I suppose it comes down to how much you push the boat out and restructure things, doesn't it, Greg?
Yeah, and I think 180, you're not getting that again, are you? That's your Chelsea money, and if you're willing to move and get first team football, then you're going to have to take a drop in money. And we're not the type of club, I hope, that are going to be spending 180 grand on a player a week. It's just too much, really, where we are. But there's options. Again, we're talking about all these exciting players. So one of them will land soon. And then Mikey can relax, and then we can start being happier about where we're going to go.
I'll check how much he's worth, actually, what the asking price is. They signed him for 52 million 2 years ago and then played him out of position, which is very Chelsea thing to do. Pete, you're scratching your head and shaking your head. I don't know if that's in response to Nkunku or anything.
Sorry, no, I just had an itch. No, I agree with Greg. Look, I think Nkunku is obviously a very good player and someone who would clearly instantly improve the squad at Forest, but you cannot be signing him. Well, I shouldn't say you cannot, because you know, football clubs and Forest have done mad stuff in the past that I've found baffling. So, you know, they could spend the money and the wages, I guess. But personally, I think you really shouldn't be doing that. Forest's top earner is on sort of circa 110 grand a week right now. And Nkunku's on not far away off twice that. You know, this is a delicate ecosystem in a dressing room, and that is not the sort of business you can be doing on a permanent transfer. If there's a very generous terms loan in it later on in the window, perhaps, then, you know, by all means go for it. But I think unless we're only paying half his salary for the season, I don't see how that can really work for us.
No, the asking price according to the Athletic is 43.3 million. So that must be in euros. I don't know. That's how, or dollars. That's how the Athletic works. But they've dropped it by 22 million apparently. I suppose a loan, Mikey, could be
very generous of them, isn't it?
Yeah, a loan, Mikey, could be advantageous, because then, or even a permanent deal. Sometimes clubs keep paying players money in the background, don't they? But we can't pay 180 grand a week, can we?
No, the guys are right. They're like, it's fundamentally groundbreaking for us to do anything like that, and it's got to be a better player than Christopher Nkunku for us to even consider it. I think he's obviously a very good player. I saw something on Twitter the other day about how much Chelsea has spent in the last 4 years. It's absolutely vulgar, honestly. I've retweeted it. Come and have a look. It's like £1 billion. and they've been in the top 3 for spend every window, I think, for the last God knows how long. It's absolutely vulgar. They must have 20, 30, 40, 50 players on their books, all on massive money. And I just don't know how they do. Well, they sell hotels themselves, but I genuinely just don't know how the dynamics of that football club work, the amount of ins and outs that they have. That they're after 2 more defenders. So I think, I said earlier on about waiting till the end of the window is a risky strategy. I think it's the strategy to dealing with Chelsea, because they're going to have loads of players that aren't registered for their 25. So if Forest say, actually, there is one club that we're going to go in at the end of it, it's probably them. That I get. That I completely get. But we won't be the only ones. So I think the only way it works for Forest is end of the window. They pay at least half his wages, and we're playing a system that suits him. There's no point bringing him in and playing him out of position like those guys did. He either plays up front or off the striker, and it needs to suit the way we do it. And it needs to be delicately managed, as Pete said. So, yeah, I think the guys are right. This is one to maybe explore during the end of the window, I think.
I think Chelsea just farm players, don't they? I mean, just looking at it here, they've sold Madueke, they've sold Petrovic, they've sold Amagu. I don't even know who he is. They've sold a player called B. Humphreys to Burnley for 14 million euros. I don't even know who that is either. They sold Kepa for 5 million after signing for 70, so that's not quite such good business. But they are just a player farm, basically, and yeah, they find ways around it, certainly. Ross Wilson, we should mention, Athletic reporting that he's favourite to land the new sporting director job at Newcastle. Worries on that front, Pete, when we talk about continuity, or have we got the support structure already in place with Ferreira and Sirianos and Edu that someone else will slot in?
It's honestly really hard to comment on it, because I don't think that anyone that I know, even people with a good sort of working knowledge of the day-to-day stuff around Forest, are really sure exactly what his job role, well, perhaps not so much the job role, I think we have a good idea of what the job role should be, but exactly what he has been doing. I mean, Forest have an enormous amount of people in those sorts of senior-ish roles in the footballing structure, and it's quite hard to tell who does what, because in lots of football clubs it's really clear, because you have, say, a sporting director who is essentially the for want of a better description, sort of the CEO of the football side of the club, and they will report into the overall CEO or chairman. And then from there, you have a sporting director who basically line manages everybody, who controls the department. So there'll be a head of recruitment, there'll be a head of sports science, all that sort of stuff. Whereas Forest have got lots of people with similar job titles. And I think it's a bit unclear what Ross Wilson's job is, whether he's more operations, whether it's a sort of more high-level administrative stuff, the contracts, all that sort of thing, or whether indeed he is in charge of recruitment. I mean, from what I heard sort of during the course of last season, it sounded like George Sirianos was very heavily involved or leading recruitment. So whether that is Ross Wilson's bag or not, I'm not too sure. And therefore, it's really hard to say what the impact's going to be. I think it's true that Forest have a lot of people in senior roles with a lot of experience and I think quality as well. So hopefully it won't be a big deal. There's also clearly the introduction of Edu to the footballing structure, which I think probably moves everyone down one place and in the pecking order with him overseeing everything. So it may be that perhaps Ross Wilson's job isn't really compatible with bringing Edu in as well. So it's hard to say, because Forest have never been that clear about what everyone actually does in the structure. So you're putting things together with the little whispers you hear and such like. But you certainly couldn't say that he's done a bad job, because everything's been pretty solid and much better run since he's been around. But to what extent he's had a major part in that, and which parts he's had a major role in, it's really unclear for me.
Apologies to Bashir Humphreys, who plays for Burnley now. After 2 loan spells in the centre back, play for the chat. Apparently, they spent 10 million on him after he played on loan there last season. Shows how little I follow the Championship now. It's not a thing for us, because I would have known that a couple of years ago, certainly. Last bit of transfer news. Lewis O'Brien looks like he's going to Wrexham for something around 5 million, but not been confirmed yet. What else should we talk about? We're going to talk about ticket prices for friendlies. I think we'll do that. Tickets for the Fiorentina game are 20 quid, and it looks like they're not opening the top tier. Is that we'll talk? Well, Pete wants to talk about ticket prices at the live show. We'll do general ticket price live show. Is 20 quid too much for a friendly, Greg, or was that about right for a Serie A team?
You have to pay for these clubs to come over a lot of the time, don't you? I remember when Leicester had Real Madrid and it cost them something like £1 million. But I like it when you have a friendly and they give the season card holders like a nice, you can go to this friendly for free and people will be in the shop buying the new shirts and checking out the seats, this, that, the other. So, yeah, I'm not going, which says a lot, really. It is a lot, especially with the European tour upcoming and trying to scrimp and save for that. So you pick and choose, don't you? And if you're lucky enough to be able to go to the home games, then £20 for a friendly where you're probably not going to see a lot of your starting 11 at the same time. It is a lot, but they've got to pay for things, haven't they? We all want signings, is that line, but for me, it's too much. I was speaking to a Mansfield fan last night who was up in arms about their 30 quid for a League One game now. And if we're charging 20 quid for a friendly, no wonder the top tiers aren't selling.
James asked in the chat about, will we talk about Gibbs-White? We will do. Jason kindly mentions Matt Turner because I forgot about him and he was like third on our list. So we'll circle back in true professional fashion. Good job this is live because you just missed it out completely. Do either of you two want to weigh on these friendly prices? I mean, when I saw how much they were, they're actually less than I thought. I thought they might be 30 when I saw how few people were going. But 20 quid is steep, I appreciate as well. Have either of you got any thoughts on it or not?
I do a little bit. I think it's too much. I agree with Greg. I think it's people, it's just too much. I mean, I went to see Mansfield Oxford the other day. I think that was eight quid. So Championship v League One. And there was maybe 1,000 people there. And we've seen the last two friendlies were nothing to shout about, were they? So I just think it's just a lot of money, isn't it? Like, I just wish, and I agree with Greg, newsflash, I just wish that they would do something and say, do you know what? We'll open everything up, come in for a £5 or come in for free. Let's get the ground full. Let's get, good atmosphere in. Let's sell some beers. Let's sell some merch. Open the ticket office. They'll probably make the money that way. I just think it's a lot of money. And Greg's right. We're doing Europe. We're in all these different competitions. The season's going to be starting soon. The clamour for tickets is going to be there. I just wish they would have, I don't know, done something different. Can I just quickly comment on Lewis O'Brien really quick? Because I know you mentioned him before. And just a general view of outgoings that Pete touched on as well. And I've never really thought of it like that. I was looking at the squad and seeing how thin we were. But actually, Pete's lens on it is quite interesting. It's got me to think in a different way. That moving players out is actually very good for the longer term, but it obviously requires us to then get the quality in. So we're almost halfway in that journey. So Pete, you've probably convinced me on that one, mate. But I think in terms of Lewis O'Brien, doesn't it show the difference in quality? So, for example, Sheffield went down with a whimper, didn't they? Then they got 93 points and didn't go up. So the gap is huge. And Lewis O'Brien was arguably one of the best players in the Championship of the year we went up. And he came in the Premier League, didn't quite work for him. And now he's going back to Championship. And it's just brutal, isn't it? The Premier League is just so hard. It's so just for people to acclimatise to. So I wish him all the best of luck. But I think, Pete, you've convinced me on that one, mate. I think Lewis leaving $5 million sounds like a good deal. And I think looking at it, it probably just frees up. And I think I'm going to reflect in a couple of weeks to see what the business is coming in. But I'm still nervous. I will say that.
518 people watching, which is great. Do us a favour and hit like if you haven't already. As Nick points out, 20 quid is the top price. It does drop down. I suppose you always look at the headline price, I would say. Pete, anything to say on that before we move on?
Yeah, I'm fully aware that there may be reasons that are just beyond my sort of fairly basic reasoning when it comes to things like ticketing and stuff. But I find it absolutely baffling in a city where we have such a buzz around our football club, where people are constantly on waiting lists to get in. And we spend half our time on this podcast talking about how we can get more people into the City Ground, that we are playing a friendly against a good side, a really recognisable name, with quite a glamorous sort of fun tie. And we're closing parts of the stadium rather than take action to get all of those people in and get them hooked and get them around the City Ground, get them into the shop, all that sort of stuff. Honestly, I just find it absolutely baffling. I don't understand why you wouldn't charge everyone at 10 quid at most and just say, come down, this is your opportunity to get your first taste of it or get a rare taste of it.
I guess they thought they could sell more tickets at 20 quid, I imagine.
No, yeah, look, obviously there's modelling and that sort of stuff, and I think some of the clubs modelling on ticket numbers is baffling because they seem to think that they can get 50,000 fans regularly to the City Ground, which I think is mad in the long term, personally. But yeah, look, I'm sure that's the reasoning behind it, and it's probably all much more technical and much more difficult than just a hothead like me, moaning about it, couldn't understand. But I don't really, I just feel, these games should be an opportunity to address some of those things that we talk about and try and build a future for the football club with new fans and such like. So yeah, confuses me a bit.
Yeah, that's my point, actually. And Pete's obviously said it better than me. But I think once you have a captive audience, you've got opportunity there, haven't you, to cross-sell, to upsell, whatever you want to call it. Brighton do it very well, and I'm conscious that's a very new ground, and it's slightly off kilt from the city centre. But once you're there, you are there for the day. Like they keep the concourse open for the late game. They sell the beers. They've got bars. They basically say, once you are here, we want you to stay here. And this was a great opportunity for Forest, and I appreciate they've not necessarily got the resources that Brighton have. But as Pete said, get the ticket office open, get the bars open, get some entertainment on the pitch, anything, just to try and say this is what we're about. This is Nottingham Forest. Let's get the stands full. But instead, what you're going to get is a stadium that's a third full, 20 quid, and it's just going to be a bit of a damp squib. And I think they've missed a trick. And you're right, Pete. There probably has been modelling that's way above what we're seeing, and maybe it just hasn't come to fruition. But I hope we're not having this conversation again next pre-season, and they've done the same. We just need to learn from it, I think.
To be fair, judging from the pre-season friendly so far, maybe they're just doing right by people and trying to stop them from watching the football because it's grisly stuff, isn't it?
The Monaco game was certainly, yeah.
It was a hard watch.
I know, it was a battle. Let's talk Morgan Gibbs-White then. He's on the plane, according to John Percy and Tom Colomossi from the Telegraph and the Mail, respectively. I don't think you've spoken on it yet, Greg. I've seen a few bits on Twitter. What are you feeling about the Gibbs-White situation? What do you want to see happen?
I'm relieved and slightly surprised, to be honest, that he's gone about this so professionally after everything's broke. Like, he turned up for training that Monday morning, and part of me thought, here we go, it's going to be one of those infamous player revolt type things, and he hasn't. Fair play to him. Hope his partner's feeling better, obviously, and it's clear now it was the case, because he's got on that plane, and it's only a positive thing for Nottingham Forest. Keep him within that squad, keep him training, get him ready for the first game of the season, because it's probably more likely than not that he'll be featuring for us at the start of the season now, because there's just not teams in for him. It was Spurs and no one else really. City must not have really explored it far enough to find out there was a clause, or they don't value him at even 60 million, which is crazy. So, yeah, if it's only Spurs, then the Gibbs-White camp's in a bit of a pickle now, and he's either got to continue to train and be professional like he clearly is doing at the minute, or make noises about really wanting to leave. But if that's the case, it's only Spurs, and they're going to know, well, we don't need to offer him what we were going to, because he's desperate to come here. So for me, he's doing all the right things now. He's turning up, which is the main thing. And I want to see him in a Forest shirt first game of the season, which if you'd have asked me that 2 weeks ago, I had to go on a Spurs podcast and talk about him when it looked like he'd definitely gone. And, I was so annoyed and so unhappy with how he's gone about it, because of obviously the year of trying to make him sign the contract and this, that, and the other. But get him in that first team for the start of the season and I'll be happy, because he's a quality player and we need to get every game out of him that we can.
Do you want to come in, Mikey?
Yeah, just to add, I kind of concur with Greg. I think it feels a bit of a messy situation. I hope they sort it one way or the other. I thought David Jackson on yesterday's podcast, Matt, talked brilliantly, as ever, about the situation, about what could be going through Morgan's mind, about it being a World Cup year, him having spent, for those of you that haven't listened, him having spent sort of 3 years here, helped us rise to where we are. The next World Cup for him is going to be 30 years old. How much of a say that plays in it? Champions League football, wage rises, all that sort of stuff. I just hope it gets sorted out, and quickly. My dad thinks he'll sign a new contract. He's a bit like Greg. He thinks he's going to be here for the start of the season.
I don't think he'll sign a new contract.
I don't. I think they'll sort it out. beforehand. I'll be surprised if he plays a competitive game for Forest.
I just think it'll go to the very end of the transfer window.
Well, that's a big problem for us if it does.
Yeah, that's not good. If that happens, I'd rather we sort it out one way or the other. So either he commits to stay in, whether that's new contract or not, and we let him go with a year left.
But what if Spurs are insisting on the 60 million? Would you not rather take it to the last day and get that extra money? And
it's really, I suppose it depends on the shape of our squad, doesn't it? Then I mean, like if it's as now, oh my word! But if we've strengthened and we've got replacements in his position, and obviously we'll have played a few games by then, the mindset might change. I like all these things to be. I think it's good. Let's sort him out for him and his family personally, and let's sort us out, and we know what we're playing with, whether that be financial, whether it be having to fill a position or what. The uncertainty is always the worst, isn't it? Just being uncertain about something. I'd rather have clarity, and then we can fix it.
Yeah, I think it's a really tricky situation where probably both sides of the ledger hold some cards. Forest and Morgan, because Morgan. I worry that he'll run down his contract, and because we're not going to drop him, we'd be foolish to drop him. So, and then he does a Trent Alexander-Arnold, which I had no problem with actually, and then goes on a free, and I don't think we can afford that. That's really long term. Or he signs a new contract because he's been backed into a corner and no one else will take him. Or the third option is what Greg says, and it rumbles on to the last day and someone buys him. And I think that might be, that's almost not an equally bad outcome as him not signing a new contract and running it down, but I think it needs resolving pretty quickly, personally. And to me, Pete, I don't think it can run to the last day. I think that's really disadvantageous for us, unless we buy a replacement before we sell him. And then do we have two number 10s competing?
Yeah, look, that's the thing I find really awkward about this situation is trying to chat at length about something that we just have so little insight into from any of the parties. All we get is briefing from the various parties or clubs or whatever through media sources that you have to take with a massive pinch of salt. So it's really hard to know where we're at with it. I mean, the first point is the legalities of it. Where are we at with the legal argument? Is that going to become anything more serious, or is that just a play to change the numbers? The second part is perhaps it could be the case that Forest are only sort of treading water on it so that they can get a replacement before he goes, because we didn't anticipate this happening and losing two of them, and therefore it feels like a big part of sort of management of the strategy, both from a footballing point of view, but also crudely from a sort of optics point of view, to get someone like a Jacob Ramsey in to fill that role before you let him go and take a bit of control of the situation and make it feel like you're not just a club that's being picked over and all that sort of stuff. Right now I haven't got a clue where we will land on this. Anything from Morgan Gibbs-White actually goes to Spurs tomorrow to he's staying and plays the season at Forest and signs a new contract, and I don't think anyone really has, to be honest. So anything could really happen. As far as I'm concerned, issues around the transfer clause itself and whether the player or agent or whatever played a role in disclosing things and all that sort of stuff aside, because we just don't have a clue about it. We also don't know about the legalities anyway, let alone how they were handled. It seems to me that Morgan's behaving as professionally as you would hope. And that's all we can really do is just sort of get on with it and see where it plays out. It's really hard to know where to come out on it. I think I agree with you, Matt, fundamentally, that I don't think it's something that we want to have dragged out until the end of the transfer window. It feels to me like what we need is some sort of control over the situation, so that it's not a case of us just getting picked apart by vultures from other club, but actually us getting what we want to a degree out of this as well. And clearly we wouldn't have wanted to sell Gibbs-White, but if we do get someone who is a proper legitimate ready-made Premier League attacking midfielder or whatever to replace him, then it feels a very different situation. And the last thing I'd say on it is, if you're one of those people booing him or going around calling him a snake on social media or whatever, have a look at yourself. It's beyond ridiculous. You got absolutely no idea what's going on. And what do you expect anyway? It's a football player. It's his career to go and have the best football career he can possibly have. It's a perfectly reasonable move if he wants to take it. As I say, aside from the legalities of the contract stuff, which we can't comment on because none of us know, so therefore you can't have an opinion on it.
I was about to comment.
It's just all normal.
You were in the snake camp, weren't you?
I was about to comment then. If it turns out that the legalities have been breached, which will come out either way, then I will have a different opinion on it, because his agent knows the rules, he knows the rules, and Spurs know the rules. But whether
his agent knows the rules, I don't know whether he knows the rules, but his agent does.
Yeah, so I'm holding judgment so far, but I like what he's doing day to day at Forest. He's turning up and he's being professional, and that's all you can ask for.
There is no doubt about what Gibbs-White has given to Forest during his 3 years here, right? That is the only evidence that we've got that means anything to anyone in terms of making a judgment on it. He's performed well, and all we've got now is what he's doing right now. I don't think you can throw any shade at him whatsoever for wanting to leave if he wanted to leave or whatever. Like Greg says, you might be able to argue that there's some slightly iffy behaviour, but to be honest, the idea that an agent and football clubs aren't going to be conspiring to get players bought for the release clause is balmy. Non-disclosure agreement or whatever aside, you're absolutely mad if you think that's not going on in the world.
But they've been found out for it, so we need to be able to act on it.
Well, but ultimately for us as fans, even if any of this stuff is the case that we haven't got a clue about, what does it matter to us? Like, it's not. I just don't feel like it's relevant to our situation and shouldn't be relevant to how we judge Morgan Gibbs-White. You say that it'll all come out in the wash. It won't come out in the wash. Bits of stuff will come out in the wash, and you won't have a clue which is true or not, because that's what's going to happen. There's two parties, well, 3 or 4 parties that are going to be briefing in different ways. And you just sort of have to muddle through it. All we can judge Morgan Gibbs-White on is what he's done for us. And, you know this better than anyone, Greg, because you spent, hard-earned time and effort making that banner for him. And it looked like it meant something to everyone. And it certainly meant something to me. That stuff hasn't all washed away because he wanted to move to a different football club, if he did, which presumably he did. I just don't think it's relevant as long as everything's handled professionally now. And, if it came to him staying for 2 more years at the football club, at this point, I think I'd back him to continue doing the sort of job he's done for us already. And if you get 5 years of Morgan Gibbs-White for 40 million quid and he delivers some of the memories that he has done already for us, then I wouldn't be that against him. I don't think it'd be money that badly spent, to be honest.
If there's legal action, if Forest actually take legal action, stuff will have to come out because there'll be reports on it. But yeah, I agree fundamentally with what you're saying. Well,
lots of that legal action is never public, and it's pretty unlikely to be public.
No, but the results will be if someone acted inappropriately.
I'd be very surprised if you get further than a settlement being made at some point along the line. But again, what's the point in commenting on the legal stuff that we don't even know if it's real beyond a letter of complaint, if that? But like I say, I just don't think I think it's unlikely you'll ever know. And even if you do, we don't know now.
Greg's got 4 minutes left of his lunch hour. Anything you want to say, Greg, before we let you go?
I do love the one thing about the Gibbs-White situation that I absolutely love is watching my Spurs mates just backtrack a little bit, because talk about a fan base who believe the hype about their own club. And they're just having to think, maybe we're not that much of a pull and we're not that big and we can't do the bully ball thing. So I've loved that. I've loved seeing the Palace fans squirm as well. I am going to have to go in a minute, so I might as well get it all. Are we any other business for me now?
Well, we are for Greg Mitchell. Yeah, we're starting to talk about Matt Turner, but I'll let the other lads. If there's anything to say, go on.
It's one for Pete, really. That we've got obviously a lot of planning and stuff to do for tomorrow before the show. So wondering what time we're going to meet to be able to do that. Yeah, professional.
Yeah, we have got some work to get down to, and I can confirm that I'll be available at the earliest opportunity to do that work. Ideally lubricated.
Yeah,
not in a weird sense, just in a drink sense.
Well, yeah, just let me know. Obviously, I finished.
It's not that kind of party.
4:30 on the dot. So
beautiful, works for me. I'll see you there.
To lift the lid before Greg goes, it normally works. I turn up at the nav with an empty notepad and write questions while sitting with Mikey and a few other lads while eating either a pie or some other fare on offer from the nav. And then these lads turn up and Mikey brings shirts, Greg brings vibes, Pete brings quiz questions. They don't need 3-hour conflabs getting lubricated.
You have a very short memory, Matt Davies. I seem to remember for the last live show, I wrote those questions on your pad for you. So let's have a little bit of respect, please.
We'll continue with the superstitions that we have.
Let's do it. Get your live show tickets. Get your live show tickets, gigantic.com. They're only a £5 if you want to see what branded merch Greg is going to be wearing as an official influencer of the Nottingham Forest world. Do come along to the Trent Nav at 7 p.m. Greg Mitchell, thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed that. See you all tomorrow.
See you
tomorrow.
See you. Bye.
See ya. Don't disappear, everyone. 574 people watching, which is wonderful. I don't even know what we can say about the next one because it's a bit of a weird one. We talked about legal action to sign a player. I don't think we ever talked about legal action to not sign a player. But reports in France from L'Equipe say Marseille have tasked a lawyer with cancelling the transfer of Matt Turner, the Forest goalkeeper, which John Textor had finalised for €8 million before the review that saw them safe from relegation. It says negotiations with the English club began this Monday. That's a bit of an odd situation, Mikey, isn't it? Not to take legal action, not to sign a footballer.
I'm not sure I've ever heard that before. But in terms of that scenario, how bizarre. How would you feel if you were Matt Turner or any player in that situation? Like, let's just say you end up going to Lyon, knowing full well they did everything they possibly can to not sign you.
Not sign you, yeah. And probably put you on the transfer list as soon as possible by saying it.
Talk about, like, how awkward would that be? So I know it's Matt Turner and there's this sort of narrative surrounding him a little bit, but just as a human being, what awful way to treat somebody. I think it's absolutely scandalous. So it'll all come out in the wash in terms of whether he's agreed to or not. But if I was Matt Turner, I'd be like, I am not going to a place that fundamentally has hired somebody to make sure that I don't step on that plane. That's absolutely awful. So I hope it sorts it out. You know, Turner's, I think, along with a few others like Emmanuel Dennis, Josh Bowler, a few others, is obviously surplus to requirements at Forest. And I hope as a human being, a fellow human being, that he sorts himself out. But if I was Turner, I'd be like, just pull out the deal. Just end it. You know, I'll task my agent with finding another club, because let's just say it does go through. He's going to feel awful. Lyon don't want him. We're obviously trying to move him on. It's just a messy situation, and one that I don't think I've seen before. But it's awful, isn't it? Just as a human being, awful.
Yeah, it's an odd one. Lyon is selling their goalie, Lucas Perry, I think his name is, isn't it, to Leeds to be their new number one. So they do need a goalie, but they don't want Matt Turner by the sound of it. Or maybe I think maybe it's not they don't want Matt Turner. Maybe it's more the financials around signing players, having sort of avoided relegation, and Turner is more of a bit of a punchline for Forest fans. Is probably another aspect of it that, you know, he's had a rough time of it and now a club doesn't want to sign him. But there's probably more to it than that, than just a headline in the Keep. But it is an unusual one that I thought we would flag. Just before we wrap things up, a word for home move estate agents. Thanks very much to Ben Sales and all the guys there. Check out the link in the description. No property this week, but hoping to bring you one soon. And if you are looking to buy or sell, they are 5-star rated on Google, so they are the people for you. The only other thing to mention, Kieran Maguire tweeting last night that Forest have converted, it's Evangelos Marinakis, 29 billion shares, debt into shares, which is a good thing. It's about 290 million quid if the shares a penny a piece. I don't really understand it all. I spoke to channel member Rafik a bit last night, or he messaged me about it. But it seems like good news and commitment from the owner that he's doing all this stuff. I don't really know how it plays into PSR, so probably one for another day. Pete Blackburn, any other business, anything you want to add before we depart?
No, nothing major from me. Looking forward to the live show tomorrow. Although, I was looking forward to it until Matt started talking down our involvement, and Steve Sully said in the comments that he's not coming, which is absolutely gutting. Albeit it does give everyone else a chance with the quiz, because he was smashing it out of the park last time. So there's some good prizes on offer, I'm sure, because Matt's going to buy them tomorrow and they're going to be really high quality.
We'll see what's in the club shop tomorrow about 3:30. We'll find out there.
Big credit card bill at the club shop tomorrow. Looking forward to it, and thanks for today. A bit of an odd chat around lots of random stuff, but it was good fun. Nice to see the lads as always.
It was an odd chat, and it was quite, yeah. I mean, like I said at the top, we've been rehashing the same topics, and to an extent, we've done that today. But I've been trying to tailor it with different slants on it for a while, and hopefully, we have a player that we actually signed to discuss. Although, if we sign Dan Ndoye, I don't know what we can say about him, because he spent about 2 weeks. We need an old school signing out of the blue. I can't think of any old school signings out of the blue for years. Villa signed someone a couple of years ago out of nowhere, like Ross Barkley or someone like that, but you get the drip feed of 400 Fabrizio Romano tweets now, so nothing's a shock anymore. Mikey, anything from you? Oh, sorry, Pete, I just talked over.
Sorry, no, I was just trying to consider when the last one was. But yeah, I guess that's the nature of 24-hour news cycles. You don't really get them anymore, do you?
No. If anyone can think of us signing out of the blue in the next minute and a half before we go, drop a name in, the one that's the last surprised you. Mikey, anything from you before we go?
Only one or two quick things. What I love about conversations like this and what we had at the start is everybody has their different slant on what they perceive to be reality. So mine's obviously we need to get a wriggle on. Greg's obviously we're doing fine, trust them. There's no right or wrong. That's an opinion. But the one thing we all have in common is we all want the club to succeed and we all want to invest again in it and we all want to be successful, all that sort of stuff. So I was just reading all the chats then and all the Twitter messages over the last few days. Don't ever feel that what I'm trying to say is don't ever feel that you're wrong because your lens is pointed towards something specific rather than somebody else. The reality is they're probably both true to some extent, but the bigger reality is we all want the same thing, which is Forest to smash it next season and to have a great season and to have a European adventure. So don't ever question that. As much as I rib Greg, I do appreciate his lens. And like I said, Pete got me to focus on something different. So that's a good thing about talking. And tomorrow I'm going to be equally as positive, not as negative. I might touch on one or two things I don't like, but it'll be, as Pete and Matt says, it'll be a great night. There's still a few tickets left, so please come along. It'll be really good fun for a couple of hours. And it's going to be nice weather too. And it's only a £5. So try and come down if you've not got anything planned.
Mrs. Davies insisted on. She said I had to buy new clothes, and I just didn't. So she's bought a whole new set of clothes because apparently all my clothes are crap and the same. But I don't know if I'll wear them. But if that entices people to buy a ticket for clothes I probably won't wear, then do come along. Thank you very much to Richard for the £2. Says Evangelist Marinakis is not selling to Spurs. We've got Jesus now. We've got an Evangelist. There's probably a third trinity of that branch. But Richard, thank you very much. Appreciate that a lot. The only thing I was going to say is a couple of things. What is coming up tomorrow? Chris Cohen, spoke to him yesterday about the state of play at Forest, a bit about coaching, a bit about loan players, most notably Joe Gardner, who he had at Lincoln and has gone to Mansfield. Some interesting chat around second loans, player progression, the next Brennan Johnson, all that kind of stuff. And a bit of chat about Splendour as well, his first music festival. So join us for that. And then if you're looking for something to do on Saturday, there is a gig at the NAV, which is the Rumble Band. I shall flag that. That they're a 13-piece band. Check out the link on gigantic.com. Also, if you're a bit further away, Family Fun Day, Saturday 2 till 5 p.m. at the Stag Inn in Kimberley to help the Spice Jets ice hockey team for children and adults with additional needs get funding to go to the special ice hockey international tournament in Toronto, of all places, next year. So check that out. And if you've got any charity events, especially during the summer, you want to plug for, drop me a line. I've got a couple as well. Twitter is the best place to do it. I just don't really check other sources very often. Right. Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. You need to get on to Greg Mitchell to get you some influencer clothes arrangements sorted out, and then you can be resplendent in your various Forest garments. Yes,
he is the king of the Nottingham Forest influencers. People are saying raffle the clothes. I can't do that. Some of them are getting returned.
Can I just also add, I'm sadly not related to Tony Blackburn, but obviously it would be an honour as a real godfather of pioneering radio.
Mikey Clarke,
great though, yeah.
Yes, of course. Mikey Clarke, are you related to Michael Clarke, the former Australia cricket captain?
No, but I always get that all the time. But I'm just thinking, genuinely, tomorrow it's the Clarke family outing. Like Lindsay's coming, my wife, my brother, even my parents are coming. So,
lovely.
Clarks are taking over the Trent Nav tomorrow.
So you know how to treat them. Lovely.
Oh yeah, it's our one day out of the year that we get to escape Limby and go out.
The asylum doors have been swung wide open.
Yeah.
Right, we really should leave it there. Join us tomorrow with Chris Cohen. Saturday, late on, because I don't know what time the kickoff is now. We'll do a post-match show and then we'll be back on Monday after that. But thanks very much for your company today. Do us a favour, hit like if you haven't already. Do consider membership or Patreon. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.